Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Creeping In, a podcast where we cover true crime, horrors, and the mysterious. I am your host, Marissa Stevens, and today I want to share with you two different caving stories, one involving cave diving, and the second being a dry caving scenario, or at least it started out that way. Cave stories make me very, very nervous, very on edge. I feel as though most of us that are not adrenaline seekers probably feel that way too. So, for protection purposes, I am coming to you from my studio, which is in fact my closet, wrapped up in my blanket for protection. With that being said, let's head down the path of today's stories. Sterkfontein is a cluster of limestone caves located in the South African province of Gauteng, just northwest of Johannesburg. Sterkfontein in Afrikaans translates to strong spring, named after several strong natural springs that rise from the ground on the property, which feed into a larger stream. Peter Verhulsel, a young cave diver with notable experience, every source I came across noted that he was pretty experienced in this area, was a constant reminder that this was not his first go at this. He had completed other dives before this. Peter was also known to love a thrill and was willing to take a risk. On September 29, 1984, Peter, who was 29 years old at the time, was diving in a group with two other friends at Sterkfontein when his curiosity drove him to go away from the guideline a total of 3 times to get a look around other areas that the group was not planning to view that day. It's important to note that when cave diving, you are to follow what is called the guideline. The guideline is your lifeline when you're below the water's surface, a lead to safety. You should always have sight of the guideline, and you are not to stray from the guideline, especially to the point that you cannot see the line. Again, this is your lifeline. This is the line that you are going to follow to get back to the surface. This is a paramount rule to ensure the safety of all divers, but as I said, Peter's curiosity simply got the best of him. The third time that Peter strayed from the line was unfortunately the last time. While trying to explore, he found himself trapped in a maze of tunnels, unable to find his way out of the labyrinth. And I just need to add my own thoughts here. There is no circumstance in which I personally would ever be cave diving. The thought alone, sitting here in the safety of my closet studio, is enough to freak me out, and I genuinely cannot fathom being underwater in a cave. I have a very big fear of dark water, so this is entirely out of the question for me. I am way too much of an overthinker. I generally enjoy low-risk activities, if I'm being honest, and I can absolutely see how, if you're more on the fearless side, this would be a really interesting hobby to take up and learn, but you could not find me under any circumstance doing this. Okay, back to our story. So he's lost in this maze, and don't forget, he's diving and is limited to only the amount of air in his tank. And at this point, his air was running low, and he was able to locate a small island at the endpoint of a tunnel located off of the main cavern, where he was able to surface and get onto the landing of this small plot. While the risk of drowning was now abated, the reality of his situation really began to set in. Without enough oxygen left in his tank to attempt to retrace his path, he figured the best course of action would be to wait it out and hope for a quick rescue. So there he sat in a pitch black cavern with no food, probably no water aside from what was available in the cave, and I have no clue if that is drinkable water, and no idea when he'll be able to be extracted. Rescue divers searched for a total of 6 weeks, scouring underground pools and creek areas to absolutely no avail. At one point during the rescue mission, the divers were actually within a mere 40 yards, which is 36.5 meters, while he was awaiting to be discovered on that small island patch. He was unable to hear the rescue divers, just as they were unable to hear him. The rescue team discovered Peter's body along with his diving equipment on that shallow beach on November 12th, 1984. The saddest part of all is that Peter had drawn out one final message in the sand as a goodbye to his family. The message read, "I love you, Cheryl and Ma." Just heartbreaking that in his final moments, he was still able to find the physical strength to leave this message for his wife and his mother. I cannot imagine the pain that this must have brought him, knowing he was going to pass away, and this was all he could do. Just so incredibly sad. While it was initially believed that Peter had drowned given the circumstances, a police spokesman stating, "We were sure he had drowned." Following his recovery, an autopsy was performed where it was concluded that he, in fact, passed due to starvation approximately 3 weeks after being stranded. From what I could gather, diving at Sterkfontein is no longer prohibited, but some of the dry cave area remains open to the public. If someone lives in the area and knows differently, please feel free to correct me in the comments. This is just what I was able to dig up. This story is just so sad. Such a young man, and such a tragic way that his life came to an end. I really feel for his family and how jarring this whole experience must have been, hoping that the search efforts would bring him home alive. He really must have been tough, though, considering his circumstances and that he was even able to survive those initial 3 weeks in that cold and dark area of the cave. For those that do cave diving currently, or maybe you used to do cave diving, please let us know in the Instagram comments on the post for this episode what you think about this story, and if you've ever had an experience that you want to share, send me an email at creepinginpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, let's get into our next story. This comes from the caving subreddit, where it was asked by our OP, "What's your most dangerous/scariest cave exploring stories?" This user then details an experience they'd had while doing some caving, and it was definitely pretty sketchy. The OP writes, "For me, the scariest was when we had a sudden water surge and weren't sure if we'd be able to make it out of the cave. We were exploring what I believe to be unmapped passages of an epic, when suddenly my friend told me he heard the exit because of the faint sound of cars driving. I told him, 'No, that sounds like a ton of bats flying. It must be a large room.' Then he replied, 'No, it sounds like an airplane flying overhead.' I started to reply, 'Dude, we're in the middle of nowhere. No planes fly this close to the ground,' when my heart fell out of my chest as I realized what was about to happen. We were exploring something I believe to be unmapped, and we were expecting to find an exit to the cave any moment. We left our bags behind as we saw signs of a nearby cave exit. I jumped parkour style back down and was about to book it back to the large area of the cave when I realized we'd have to go through a relatively long crawling area and we wouldn't make it in time and we'd be fucked for sure. I turned around and yelled, 'We gotta climb up that huge area up there.' The roar of the water got louder and louder. We knew we had no time. We moved over in this small room to the highest point, and a moment after, the water surge began pouring in from above. It got very cold. For a moment, we watched the water level rise in the room, and I prayed. I told the girl I was with that I loved her too, something I hadn't responded to. After a minute or two of sitting in a helpless panic, we realized the water wasn't going to rise any higher. We realized the water was flowing out and there was no flood risk. We might be trapped due to a sump, and getting hit by the water surge on a climb would have been bad, but we were fine. We spent the next unknown period of time talking about how XYZ friend would be missing at work the next day, how 2 people I told would attempt to make contact and fail, and how my girl would also be missing. How a villager let us park the car in his field, and how he'd notice it the next morning still there. How the rescue team would have to put things together soon, and how they would go first the wrong way in the cave because they'd follow the big and obvious way, then later realize we made a tight turn into a new section, and how we could drink the water to survive. What was shitty was that we left our bags at the entrance of the crawl. We weren't expecting it to continue so long, and then open into something so big and impressive. We also saw signs that an exit was nearby, and it was generally moving up, so we were expecting to find an exit or a shaft entrance sooner or later, so I never returned to grab the packs. The other way was bigger and more obvious, which we were planning to explore more of. That was the plan, but we got carried away in this new section. This led to a fear that our battery life was limited, and every second with the light on was dangerous. If we had our packs, we'd have plenty of snacks for 1 to 2 days of food and water. We'd have a space blanket. We'd have plenty of light for the week, at least on low. So we sat in the darkness and listened to the sound of the raging water coming from above and passing below. We huddled together and warmed ourselves up. We would not freeze to death. Soon the rage turned into a trickle, and then it stopped. For how long we waited, we don't know. There was then a debate about whether we should follow a dry passage that goes to the exit of the cave out, which is uncharted and new, or if we should take the same way out but risk getting shot by a water surge. I ran a quick survey of the new dry passage. I'm fairly certain it reconnects via an upper way to where we started, but there's no certainties in connecting cave passages. It went on for so long, I got so far from the team I could not hear them. The room was huge, pristine, no signs of anyone having been there. But perhaps the local villagers had been there, just I couldn't find anything like arrows, footprints, or trash. We were already deep in the cave. Eventually, we decided that, while it would be better to explore that perfectly dry way out of the cave, we had a limited light battery and had to take the water way out. One guy was real ballsy on it, offering to take the lead and find safe zones that were dry. Because I was the one to realize it was a water surge, I had to be the last to listen again. Lead man would run/crawl fast down the tight way and find a safe zone. He'd yell back, "Safe haven." Person 2 would hustle ASAP through the water line and get onto the safe platform. I would have to go last. The trickle of water made it hard to hear whether there was going to be another surge coming. Also, I had surveyed upstream a bit. I saw that there was water flowing in, but leaving via another way. Would this other way reconnect with the lower wet passage out? Also, this means that water surged so intensely that it shot over a barrier that I saw where the water was flowing out. Still heard the sound of flowing water. Despite no flowing water on our position, we decided we needed to know what the situation was to try and make the best decision. Anyways, we continued on with our strategy in absolute fucking fear that a water surge would come and smack us. That a water surge would come and smack into us and we'd be sent into a big boss. Anyways, we continued on with our strategy in absolute fucking fear that a water surge would come and smack into us and we'd be sent into Big Boss. Big Boss was a tight crawl. Was the tight crawl that we had to enter in order to get this new that we had to enter in order to get to this new section of uncharted cave. The rest of the cave was so large you wouldn't be that afraid of water, as well as the main way that we were planning to explore. This way, we weren't sure if it was sumped. From our memory, it was 5 minutes of painful crawling over rocks while it was wide and not tall, so a water surge could be deadly. While it was wide, it was not tall, so a water surge could be deadly. If you got into Big Boss and got hit by a water surge, you'd be done for. Once we got to Big Boss, we propped up on our last safe ledge of dryness. It was the big moment. Return to our safe room and wait for rescue, or push down Big Boss to return to the main large chamber that we knew for sure would be safe enough. Also, our packs were at the end of Big Boss. If we could get there, we'd have safe water, food, etc., and an easy way out of the cave. Lead Man was fearless of water. I don't know that he's had experience in raging waters. I have. I don't know that he's had experience in raging waters. I have. I've been pulled out by a riptide in the ocean. I've drowned a dirt bike off road when the water levels rose and I almost lost control in the flooded stream. I fear water not because of fear, but because of my deep respect of her absolute power when she chooses to strike. I let Leadman push on. I let Leadman push on. He decided he would check if Big Boss was flooded or not. Risking a water surge, forcing him to. I let Leadman push on. He decided he would check if Big Boss is flooded or not. Risking a water surge, forcing him into the sump if that was the case. He crawled halfway down, past the corner, yelled it wasn't sumped at all. He crawled halfway down the past. He crawled halfway down. He crawled halfway down past the corner and yelled, "It wasn't sumped at all." Turns out Big Boss did have an outflow and we could do it if we didn't get hit by a water surge. And we could do it if we didn't get hit by a water surge. I yelled to him, "Keep going." I ran back far, deeper into the cave near the last safe ledge. I yelled for the team, waiting on their Big Boss attack, to be quiet. I yelled for the team, waiting on their Big Boss attack, to be quiet. I listened carefully, heart pounding. Hold breath. Heart pounding. Held breath. Go, 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 I yelled, and the team began crawling as fast as they fucking could through the Big Boss. It was clear, no surge, but once you were in, you were in. If a water surge hit you, better hold your breath and crawl all the way out. There would be no turning around, and the pressure would force you to go deeper. The crawl coming into the cave in this part felt like an eternity. The rocks are rough and brutal. Going back, we all agreed there was no time for crawling slow. We agreed to bruise and cut the fuck out of our bodies because a water surge may not be survivable. I ran as fast as I could to Big Boss and dove in. I slammed my body through the rocks and I crawled as fast as I could. Leadman yelled, "We made it?" I stopped to take my breath. Wait, that's it? Going in, we were so careful and slow. It felt like 5 to 10 minutes of crawling. Going back, it was a minute or two, max. Going back, it was a minute or two, max. Either that or we made some kind of crawling speed records. Don't care. Go, go, go. Once out of Big Boss, our bags were sat in the same spot. Dry, as if the cave never water surged. Everything was the same. We grabbed our bags and hustled on out. We got out of the cave past our call-out time, but it was late at night and notified everyone. Rescue likely would have been mobilized the next morning, but they didn't. I think I have undiagnosed PTSD from this event because things like waterfalls, rivers, etc. make me lose my shit and give me panic attacks. Sometimes even up on mountains, the sound of wind makes me feel like something is coming, and I get that sense of doom. We made, or rather mainly me as the trip leader, a series of mistakes going into that section that led to that situation. I may list it out in another post. In short, we were hungover and so making stupid In short, we were hungover. So that led to making stupid decisions. It was a rainy forecast, but dry when entering the cave. I prefer entering caves when it's raining if the rainy season. I prefer entering caves when it's raining if it's the rainy season, so you know what's going to happen. And we left our packs back there. And of course, we left the fucking GoPro too, so we didn't get any of the footage of the water surge incident. I really wish we could have recorded it. I want to know logically how bad it would be. When I look back in my memory, I don't think it was that bad, but going from silence to flowing water falling down rocks, a waterfall sound, similar to a waterfall sound, it sure felt like a monster was coming to kill us. I can absolutely relate to feeling that sense of doom, like something is going to happen. I've felt that many times in my life, and it's never fun. And I think it would be even harder to feel that way during an experience like this. The tight squeezes that you have to endure while caving just terrify me. Those tight squeezes that you have to endure while caving just terrify me. The other thing about hobbies like caving or cave diving is the experience you have is incredibly important and likely does contribute. The other thing about hobbies like cave diving or caving is the experience you have, like how many years you've been doing it, is definitely incredibly important and likely does contribute to you feeling more safe. But you're also dealing with Mother Nature, and she can be both unpredictable and extremely unforgiving. You just never know when this unpredictability will be too much to overcome. Okay, so these stories have confirmed for me at least that I will not be entering into any caves, probably ever. I'm perfectly content with being a self proclaimed scaredy cat, and I will proudly wear my title. What did you guys think of these stories? How do you think you would fare in a situation like this? How do you think you would fare in a situation of this sort? I would really love to hear what you're thinking. I would really love to hear what you're thinking. Leave me a comment over on our Instagram page for the post on this episode, which is Creeping In Podcast, or over on our YouTube channel, which is Creeping In Pod. If you have a suggestion or a personal story that you would like to share for an episode, email me at creepinginpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to continue to support this show and get more content like this, please take a minute and leave us a review, as this really helps us to reach more people. And I just want to thank everybody so much for listening to our second episode here, and I will chat with you guys next time.